You know the moment, not the decision, the moment before the decision. The hotel bathroom, 6 in the morning, you're standing in the sink and the mirror is right there and you're not looking at it. Not fully, because you already know what's there. The shirt isn't on yet. And there's a second, maybe two, where you're just not quite looking. The second is doing a lot of work. That second is doing a lot of work. Because in that second, something gets filed, something gets noted, and then not addressed. And you move on. Shower, shirt, jacket, the cufflinks, the version of you that the day requires. And the man in the mirror stays there. Here's the law. Intensity does not fix dysfunction. It amplifies it. Write that down or don't. By the end of this, you won't need to. The first thing most men do when they finally decide to fix their body is train harder, more sessions, earlier mornings. Another program pulled up on a Sunday night with that specific, quiet certainty that this time it's different. Stop. That is the wrong first move. Not because effort is wrong. Effort is never wrong. But effort in the wrong order is not discipline. It is denial with a work ethic. Before sculpting, before shredding, before any of it, you don't start at sculpt. You strip, not punish, not sprint, not white knuckle your way through 6 weeks of suffering and call it a transformation. Strip. Deliberately, precisely, the way a serious operator restructures a company that's carrying too much overhead before injecting capital for growth. You don't pour money into a bloated operation. You cut what's costing you before you build what will earn you. The body is no different. This is Iron Suits, where strength wears the crown. I am Marwan. If you're new to Iron Suits, this is what we do here. This podcast is for men who have built real authority. Founders, operators, CEOs, men carrying decisions at a level most people don't see and won't understand. Men whose standards in the deal room, in the boardroom, in every professional environment are non-negotiable, and who have quietly allowed the body to drift behind everything else. Not through laziness, through sequence, through years of building something while the body ran on whatever fuel was available. Reactive eating, disrupted sleep, elevated stress that never fully resolved between seasons. And the physical result of it all, not always visible to the world, visible to you in the mirror that doesn't care how good the quarter was. That's the man this is for. And if that's not you, no problem. This isn't your episode. Most fat loss fails for one specific reason. Not effort, not willpower, not even diet. Sequencing. The man who begins a physical transformation by training harder and eating less is attempting to extract output from a system that hasn't been reset. He's asking for performance from an operation with broken unit economics. His metabolic signals are dysregulated. His hunger hormones are not delivering accurate information. His energy production is inefficient. His relationship with food is reactive, not strategic, shaped by airports and client dinners and the 11 p.m. moment where the laptop is still open and whatever is in the hotel minibar becomes the only meal since lunch. He puts intensity on top of all that, And for 6 weeks, it works, visibly, encouragingly. Then the system pushes back. Hunger increases, energy collapses. He's tired in a way that sleep doesn't fix. The adherence breaks, not in one dramatic decision, but in slow accumulation of exceptions that each carry a reasonable justification. The client dinner, the travel week, the project that required everything, the Monday that keeps getting rescheduled, and he calls it a discipline failure. It wasn't. It was a sequencing failure. He skipped the foundation, and the foundation, the stage that everything else runs on, is strip. And this is where intelligent men get particularly exposed. The smarter the man, the more sophisticated the rationalization. He doesn't think he's skipping the foundation. He thinks he's being efficient. He thinks he already understands the fundamentals, so he can move past them. He thinks the first stage is for men who haven't figured it out yet. Stop. The first stage is not for beginners. It's for anyone running a dysregulated system. And after years at the level most of you have been operating, the system is dysregulated. That's not an insult, that's physics. The body doesn't care how convincing your explanation was. You're not behind because the plan failed. You are behind because the sequence was never honored. I know exactly what to do, so why am I here? The response is predictable, not out loud, internally. The version of this conversation that happened while the version of this conversation that happens while a man is nodding along. It sounds like, I don't need to reset anything. I just need to eat less and move more. I've done it before. I know what works. I just need to actually do it. If that were true and you'd done it, you wouldn't be here. I know what to do is not evidence of readiness. It is, in most cases, the most polished excuse available to an intelligent man. Think about what that sentence actually does. It closes the inquiry. It signals to the internal listener there's no new information required here, so no new action is required yet. It is a sentence that sounds like preparation. It functions like avoidance. And this is the part that's uncomfortable. Men at your level are extraordinarily good at it because the cover is perfect. It doesn't look like avoidance. It looks like a man who already understands the problem and is simply waiting for the right moment to execute. The right moment never comes because the sentence itself is doing the work of preventing it. A man can be operationally ruthless and physically evasive at the same time. Those two things are not in conflict. They have never been in conflict. And one of them The evasion has had a decade to practice its disguise. Most men don't skip stroke because they're confused. They skip it because it refuses to flatter them. There's no drama in calibration, no announcement, no moment where the effort feels to commensurate with the identity of a man who has built what you've built. So the mind, intelligently, efficiently, finds reasons to begin somewhere more impressive. That's not ambition. That's the old pattern wearing ambition's clothes. The men at your level do not have a knowledge problem. They have a system problem. And a system problem is not solved by knowing more. It is solved by resetting the system before applying any plan to it. You can't run a clean code on corrupted hardware. Same plan, same mirror. You have restructured businesses. You know what it looks like. Genuinely know, not abstractly, to inherit an operation carrying costs they can't justify. Legacy processes, bloated overhead, systems running on decisions that made sense in year 2 and haven't been reviewed since. An organization that's technically functioning but producing a fraction of what inputs should generate. You don't optimize that operation. You strip it first, you remove the overhead, reset the unit economics. Establish what the business actually costs to run cleanly. Then, only then, do you build. The body is in that operation. Years of chronic stress have elevated cortisol baseline. Irregular, reactive nutrition has impaired the insulin response. Sleep treated as a variable, something managed around rather than protected, has compressed testosterone production. The system is running on legacy settings that made sense during the sprint years and haven't been reviewed since. And this is where the bullshit starts. Not from you, from the industry. The fitness industry wants to sell you the optimization before the audit. The advanced program, the elite protocol, the thing that makes transformation feel like it belongs at your level. Because that's a product. That's what sells. Foundations don't sell. Foundations are what you do before the work that anyone notices, before the visible change, before the thing you can reference in a conversation or see it in a photograph. The foundation is visible and unglamorous, and it is, without exception, the reason every previous attempt didn't hold. A broken foundation does not become stable because a man standing on it is important. Picture it. You're standing in the lift of a hotel, or the hotel, the one where the walls are mirrored. You just finished a client dinner. The jacket is on. The shirt is pressed from the front. Everything reads correctly. And then the doors close and it's just you in the reflection, and the angle catches something. And for a moment, just a moment, you see the gap between the standard you hold everywhere else and what's actually standing in that lift. And then the doors open and you step out, and the moment goes with it. Filed, not addressed. The same way it was filed that morning. the same way it was filed the Monday before, where the plan was to start this week and the week before that. The first stage is it's not beneath you. It is the stage that reveals you. A man who skips the foundation is not moving faster. He is failing earlier and paying more each time to return to the same place. I've been here before. Strip works on three things simultaneously. None of them are dramatic. That's not a warning. That's the point. The first is metabolic recalibration. You're at the client dinner, 3 courses, because it's that kind of meeting. You're not hungry. You haven't been genuinely hungry since mid-morning. But the red basket is on the table and everyone else is eating and the conversation is running and 2 pieces are gone before you've consciously made a decision. Not because you lack discipline, because the hunger signal, the mechanism that should tell you I'm depleted, eat now versus I'm not, don't. That mechanism has been overridden so many times by the schedule that it no longer functions accurately. He eats not when he's hungry, when he's available, not when he's depleted, when he's stressed. Strip resets that signal, not by removing dinners, by restoring the mechanism so that the decision is conscious rather than automated. So the man at the table is making a choice, not just responding to whatever the environment is offering. Intensity does not fix a broken signal. It trains you to ignore it harder. The second is nutritional architecture. Not a meal plan. I want to be precise about that because for men operating at this level, a meal plan is a fantasy. The schedule will not cooperate. The travel will not cooperate. The client who moves their dinner to Thursday will not cooperate. Nutritional architecture is a framework that functions inside the life that actually exists. When you eat, what that non-negotiable anchor is, protein, daily, not tracked obsessively, established as a floor that doesn't move. A sustainable caloric structure, not starvation, not theoretical restriction, a deliberate deficit sized for a man whose cognitive output still has to perform. And alcohol, not elimination, management. A protocol for the environments where alcohol is social currency and opting out is not a real option. Because telling an operator at your level to simply stop drinking at client events is not strategy. It is a coaching fantasy that has never met a real business dinner. The late night, the laptop still open, the drink that was 1 and becomes 2 because the evening ran long and the project needs another hour, and the boundary between work and not work dissolves somewhere around year 3 of building the company. That is not a character flaw. That is a system running without a structure. Structure is what strip. Let me say it again. Structure is what strip installs before discipline can run on it. Men love intensity because it lets them avoid precision. Strip removes that option. The third is energy recalibration. There's a version of tired that sleep doesn't fix. You know it. The morning that requires the same mechanical effort regardless of how many hours passed. The afternoon that needs managing, not because the work is hard, because the body is not producing the energy accurately. The cognitive drag that gets attributed to workload, to stress, to the demands of the business, because those are the available explanations and they're not entirely wrong. But they're not the whole explanation. The airport lounge at 7 a.m., the flight where the work needs to happen, but the thinking is thick. The decision that requires more time than it should because the processing isn't clean. A man running decisions on a system that is inflamed, sleep compromised, and metabolically inefficient. That man is not operating at the level his decisions require. And this is the part most men don't want to sit with. The gap between how sharp you think you are and how sharp you actually are when the system is compromised. You can't measure that gap from inside it. As strip progresses, the system is restructured. The energy production restores, not dramatically, consistently. The inflammation decreases, the cognitive clarity that's been partially available becomes more available. Sleep quality improves, not as a side effect, as a direct result of removing the hormonal disruption that poor nutrition and excess body fat produce. The fatigue you've been managing is a symptom. Strip treats the symptom, not the symptom. Treats a system. Let me say that again. Strip treats the system, not the symptom. These are not promises. These are the documented outcomes of a system being restored to accurate function. Strip is not about losing weight. It's about restoring the system that everything else runs on. What strip looks like in practice, and I want to give you the real version, not a program, not a branded system, the architecture. A precise, sustainable caloric deficit, calculated, not punishing, not theatrical, a number that produces consistent results across the duration of the stage without compromising the cognitive load your business still requires from you every day. Protein as the anchor, a daily floor, not an obsession. It preserves what you have while the excess is removed. Without it, you lose both. With it, you lose what you're there to lose. Alcohol is managed with a protocol, not eliminated. Managed because your environment is real and your social obligations are real. And strip works inside the life you actually have. And sleep? Sleep is not recovery bonus in the strip. Sleep is the hormonal recalibration, the testosterone production, the cortisol regulation, the metabolic restoration that happens outside your conscious control. The one input you cannot compensate for with effort. Without sleep, strip does not complete. Now, this is where most men start negotiating, and I want to name it because it's very specific the way it happens. One client dinner becomes proof the structure is unrealistic. One travel week becomes evidence a framework can't survive contact with the real schedule. One best night of sleep becomes permission, quiet, reasonable sounding permission to suspend the whole stage until things settle. That's not complexity. That's not the schedule being difficult. That's the old pattern looking for a legal loophole. Let's not dress that up. The structure does not require a perfect week. It requires a decision about what the non-negotiables are, and then the discipline to protect them inside an imperfect one. That's it. That's the whole game. And a man who can hold a company standard through a difficult quarter can hold a nutritional floor through a difficult travel week. He just hasn't decided yet. Strip has a defined completion point, not a date, a condition, when the hunger signals are accurate, when the energy is stable, when the reactive eating has reduced, not through white knuckling, through the mechanism functioning honestly again, when the system is ready to support what comes next. Then, and only then, sculpt begins. Not because you've earned it, because the foundation can hold it. If I skip this again, I already know where it ends. The men who skip strip always end up back at strip. They just pay a higher price to get there. Here's the thing about that price. The second time round, it's not the same cost. The metabolic dysfunction compounds. The hormonal disruption compounds. The gap between the physical standard you're projecting and what you're actually running on, that compounds too. Quietly, consistently, until it is no longer private. And the reason most men skip it is not ignorance. That is the comfortable version of the story. Right? I didn't know the sequence mattered. I didn't understand why the foundation was a foundation. That version means failure was informational, correctable, innocent. No. You have known some version of this, that the foundation matters, that intensity applied to dysfunction doesn't hold, that the last few attempts failed at the same point for the same underlying reason. You have known. Not in these words, in the pattern. The pattern is the knowledge. And if you skip strip again, having heard this, having seen the pattern named, having stood in that hotel bathroom at 6 a.m. and filed it and moved on, then it is no longer a sequencing error. It is a decision. The results that follow from completing strip are permanent. The ones that skip it never are, because the system that produced them was never stable. It was always going to push back. It always does. Do the foundation work, not because it's motivating, because it is the only sequence that holds. You're in stage 1, or you're about to be. Either way, something has shifted here. Not the information, the recognition, because you already know most of this. Not in these words, but in the pattern, in the Monday that keeps moving, in the plan that keeps failing at the same point, in the gap between the standard you hold everywhere else and what you've been tolerating here. That gap is not a mystery. It is a skipped stage. And the only question, is not whether you know what strip requires. It is whether you'll approve the exception again. The travel week that makes it impossible. The client season that makes it unreasonable. The schedule that makes everything else the priority. And this, the thing that starts when things settle. Things don't settle. You know that. You build something. things don't settle. You build a standard inside the chaos, or you don't build it at all. There is no version of this where the timing is clean. There is no version when the week cooperates, the travel pauses, the dinners disappear, and the conditions finally align. There is only the man standing at the mirror at 6 in the morning, deciding whether to file it again. If this landed, you need to hear episode 9. You didn't lose discipline, you approved the exception. Same pattern, different room. It will show you exactly where the exception gets signed off and why it always sounds reasonable at the time. The gap is not a mystery. It is a skip stage. It is the one place your standards stopped matching your title. And the only question, is not whether you know what strip requires. Next episode, stage 2, sculpt. Restoring the physical presence that a man at your level should carry. Until then, this is Iron Suits. I'll see you on the next episode.